What do you Paresh, sir? Your life?
Hello, good evening and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. In Conversation With is a management series by CASI New York, where we invite senior professionals from the industry from across the world in search of executable advice. My name is Paresh and I'm a member of the board of directors at CASI New York. We are the world's largest platform for sustainability with a presence across 52 countries. We also run what is probably the world's largest, again, volunteering platform with a reach of over 3 million volunteers. So thank you all for joining us. Before we go on to the chief guest for the day, I have a generic question. Anyone from the panel can answer it. Please give me a 30-40 second answer so that we move on with the event for the day. But I request any one of you to answer this question. Anyone can. So my question is, 10, 15 years back, or maybe 1,000 years back, India always had a generous feeling. You know, Indians are givers. So in every religion, and there are so many religions in India, in every religion, we are asked to give, that you should help the needy, you should help the poor, you should help the children, you should help people get educated. So we already have a feeling of giving from thousands of years in this country. But 10, 15 years back, the CSR rule was there in India. So we started talking about CSR. Corporate India was looking at CSR. Okay, this is new. Let's do CSR. From CSR, then things suddenly became tight and we were asked to look at sustainability. Then again, in the last 2 years, things are becoming tighter. Policy, news, articulation, everything. Then from CSR to sustainability, we are moving on to climate change. There's so many things happening on climate change. There are so many rules, policies, procedures coming on climate change that corporate India is now looking at that. And we are yet to settle in with climate change and sustainability. And then there is something called as ESG, end to end. You know, so now corporate India, suddenly all the heads of CSRs and sustainability and the departments and the policymakers are now supposed to do CSR, sustainability, ESG, and now they are trying to grasp with something called as ESG. How well is corporate India taking this? Is it difficult? Anyone can take it.
Can I go?
Please.
Charles, so I'm representing corporate, so maybe I would want to add. So the point which you made, Paresh, in terms of the requirements getting more stringent, actually last 15 years, it has actually given most of like the trial session for the corporates for this kind of massive change or transformation which is happening currently. So last 15 years, actually corporates have been able to build their capability in terms of skills and people required to manage issues, complex issues like ESG. So yes, there is some struggle, but I don't think it's going to be an uphill task. If you look at ESG policies and response on ESG, Indian corporates maybe at best will be like 2 years behind EU. Otherwise, all other geographies, we are at par. That is my take.
Anuragji, you had an opinion, sir.
No, my limited response there is that these are very organic ones. I always tell people that when the CSR rule came in, 3 years corporate spent thinking that it will go away. We were wishing that it won't remain there. Then after 3 years, we realized that it will be there. So we need to what is called look for what is called how to maximize the return in this. We are smarter souls. Human beings are smarter in all possible sense, and that's the reason why government came out with some of these stringent processes there, because we started taking it too lightly. The whole attempt of, I'll say, shifting your legitimate marketing expenses as a CSR expense, shifting your legitimate business expenses as CSR expense, shifting your, I'll say, some of the core expenses of core business expenses as CSR expense, wrapping it properly and then showing it as CSR expense. These were, I'll say, some of the reasons why people came out with very, very stringent one. Same is with the sustainability and climate change. People were wishing that's not true. But there were a number of people 10 years ago, they were saying that, hey, this is all hogwash. There's nothing called climate change. There's nothing called, you are just creating avenues for raising resources. And then suddenly when you realize that, I'm talking about India primarily, there are close to 265 hotspots there in India, which earlier used to witness, I'll say, disasters every 3 to 4 years. These days, you are having 2 disasters per year. Coming another 3 or 4 years, you will have 5 disasters per year. That's the kind of situation that you've got in yourself. It's very linked to, if you look at the whole discussion and discourse on climate change, it's linked with ESG in that particular sense. If you do not bring in culture, we do not bring in some change, shift, orientation in the way you do your business, you're never going to hit at the sustainability and climate change issue that you need to hit at. There are huge amount of discourse that's happening there. We are trying to, and Parezi, you, Mitesh, all of you who are there in this particular panel, and also outside this particular panel, sustainability for ages became a very romantic idea. You had the page 3 people talking about sustainability and environment because they thought that this is something good to talk about. Something gives them a brownie point there without having a valid knowledge on all those issues. You start looking at, you always talked about either or rather than looking at a proper trade-off. And once you start doing it, that's what ESG is going to do that. You need to start doing a trade-off there. You need to start looking at what is good for you. Whether what is good for UK is good for India, what is good for India is good for Ethiopia, what is good for Mumbai is good for Nandurbar, whether what is good for Nandurbar is good for Amravati. These are the questions that people need to ask. And that's where I find this to be very organic one. So I'm not surprised. I'm loving this. If you ask me, then I'll say that more confusion. This will put in more rigor back into the system. That's what the CSR professional need to become. It can't be, it should be. And the way we have treated CSR, anyone can do this. It's like, this is. I still remember I was talking to one of the CEO of one of the, I'll say, known brand on sustainability and CSR. And he told me that if engineers can run a plant, then they can also run CSR. I said that that's the problem that you're creating for yourself. CSR, you shouldn't treat this CSR as a subject that anyone can do this. And always say that common sense is the most uncommon thing in this particular world.
No, we'll come back to CSR and the infrastructures within CSR, Anuragji, but thank you for your opinion. And I completely agree. Greek philosopher Confucius also said the same thing. From confusion comes clarity. So, as you said, so thank you very much for your thoughts. Shubhamji, over to you, the guest of honor for the day. Thank you very much for being here. Please tell us your thoughts, sir, on sustainability, climate change, and CSR.
Let me start by mentioning that we really need more people like Anuragji into the system, really, because he's the one who is appreciating the stringency of the CSR rules in the country. So that is a great thing. And thank you, Pareshji and Miteshji, for inviting me to be a chief guest in this great conference. And I think a very pressing topic of sustainability and ESG. I really want to share an idea which I have been working on in the past couple of months here, and I think it really touches upon the heart of sustainability and how sustainability has to be understood, really, by the people and by the system also. So all of us have heard about something called vocal for local, which the government of India has been really pressing upon in the past few years. I want to propose something called local for global today. So, I mean, the idea is very simple, that, self-sufficiency is really a great leap towards sustainability, and I think both need to be dealt together in the real sense of the term to attain sustainability in its right spirit. So right now I'm posted in Gadchiroli, which is an environmentally abundant place, both in terms of carbon imprint as well as agriculture and forest produce. And this place has a feel of its own, which not only gives you the space to think about sustainability and why it's important, but also tells you and keeps pressing you in terms of trying to think about carbon footprint, carbon imprint, and how and why it is different, because you get to experience the real sense of being a sustainable place, environmentally positive and neutral place. So right now what we are working on is something called Gadchiroli, supporting entrepreneurs for empowerment and development needs, which in an abbreviation spells at GSEEDS. The idea is very simple. The idea, as I said, is local for global. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to build a design thinking and innovation lab. What this lab is going to do is to bring in state-of-the-art innovation using local resources. Local resources which are both agricultural as well as forest produce, which can be as simple as a flower or as simple as something called custard apple. What we are trying to do here again is we are collaborating with again the greatest and the brightest minds of the country, from IIT Bombay, IIM Ahmedabad, TIS Hyderabad, Tata Chemicals, Tata Trust. A lot of best brains of the country have come together and trying to help us out in this initiative of ours. What we are trying to do is we are trying to plug the loopholes which have existed into the system earlier, when the government has really tried to chip in and try to provide an income enhancing solution to the people, which are absolutely PVTGs that we are dealing with here, the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, and they really need somebody to handhold them at least for a year or so before they're able to stand on their own feet themselves. So now we are also trying to do the same thing. We are trying to provide a processing center for MFP, which is minor forest produce, which is easily accessible, available, and the foresters have the right to collect the MFP from the forest without any cost. And also agricultural produce, which is again abundantly available here, because this area is 76% forested that I'm working in right now. The loopholes that I'm talking about are primarily two. One is to ensure a regular supply of raw materials to this processing center, which we are trying to build in the form of a state-of-the-art innovation machinery and all that. How are we able to do that? We are trying to train our local youth to do that survey for us. The kids of industrial training institutes, which nobody thinks are capable enough of doing anything, we are trying to bring them into the mainstream, trying to get them to do the survey, collect the data for us, analyze the data for us, and tell us these are the top 5 products, top 5 raw materials which you need to really do something about. And then we bring in Tata Chemicals and Tata Trust, and trying to customize all the latest technology, latest machinery for us to produce something which is ultimately going to be modified in the form of a final finished product. And again, the major and the most important loophole which generally exists in the governmental system, and anything that the government tries to bring in, is lack of knowledge of marketing, packaging, branding, all that sort of knowledge which the IIM kids and IIT Bombay kids and IIT Delhi kids are trained for. We are generally found shortchanged. So what we have done, we have just asked them, we are probably not aware of how to do this, but we would really like you to come us and teach our kids about how to do this. So this initiative, ultimately the idea is that these products which will be locally manufactured in a place like Bhamragarh, which is Naxal affected, which is one of the most disadvantaged backward areas of the entire country, this place will produce goods which will be global and international in their quality standards, which will be available on every shelf that you can imagine across the globe. That is the thought process that we're working with. We don't want it to be limited to just Gadchiroli or just Maharashtra. We want this product to be available everywhere. We want this to be international standard. We are already looking at FSSAI international standards for certification of our products that we are producing. And that is because we are sure that the products that we are going to produce are going to be of that quality, that certification will be given to us. So this is how we are imagining our initiative to be. Ultimately, the idea is, it makes me seem like a very, very crazy idea, but in the end, I think this is what we are hired for, and I think this is really what matters in the end. So I just wanted to share my thought process on how I look at self-sufficiency and sustainability in terms of how really sustainability can be ensured in a place where you are really really challenged to not only make people understand what ESG is all about, what sustainability law is all about, but also keeping in mind, which is, I think, one of the most important and challenging factors for sustainability, is the economical needs of a particular society. And I think the balance between the two is really the important factor in terms of understanding the idea of sustainability. So I'm going to stop there, and thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you, Shubhamji, for your thoughts. I completely agree with you at multiple levels. One, we are working with the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship ourselves at CASI in Maharashtra. So that is one thing which we are doing. Unfortunately, we have not been able to reach out to rural places yet, but we understand the effectiveness that you need in terms of sales and marketing. So what we are doing is, and I will be personally training 900 people at the IIT event, IIT Powai event this year. So I'm training 900 social sector startup enthusiasts in the next 2 months. So it's a project which we have undertaken along with IIT Powai, and CASI is the exclusive training partner. We are doing this training for free because it is a social sector startup enthusiast. So just like what you are trying to achieve, we are also trying to achieve two things. One, a social effect, because most of the people who want to do a social sector entrepreneurship program, they will go back to the villages and try to create a business there. So that is what we are pushing them to do. And the second thing is, again, we are helping them in sales, marketing, branding, and such things. Because the social business is, if we are able to package them nicely, then yes, we can become global. Otherwise, it will remain within that. So tell me, Shubhamji, this particular thing that you are doing, I'm sure the Tatas are supporting through the trust. It is Tata Trust is, everybody knows them across the world. So this particular thing that you are doing, is it a government initiative? Is it a Gadchiroli initiative? Is this something that is happening across rural places in India? How did it start?
So basically, right now I'm the office that I'm handling in. It's called the Project Office for Integrated Tribal Development Project, located in Bhamragarh. This is what the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, New Delhi, wanted to do all over the country. So they have put us in a place which is one of the most backward places, and they want us to look for betterment, opportunities for betterment of the people. So we have a lot of schemes which keep on coming to us from district, from the Maharashtra government as well as the central government. So this was part of one of the schemes which I had. Is basically I had to do something for income generation for the people. And so I was just sitting with one of the people, and we were discussing brainstorming of sorts, and we came across this idea. Let us try to do this, and let us try to do, because I was aware of the major two loopholes, the problematic aspects which you also rightly mentioned, that the initial training and the later handholding, which is what is lacking in the success of any of the initiatives which the government is trying to take up. So we wanted to do this, and I think the best solution that I could think of was to get people who are the experts in doing this. Ultimately, the problem is the government tries to do everything on its own by taking ownership of everything. So what we have done is this is a government initiative, but ultimately the ownership is going to be transferred to the people who are going to be part of this initiative. Every technology is going to be transferred to them. All the machinery is going to be transferred to them. The government will have 0% stakes in this initiative. We will just handhold the people for the first year, and then leave them in the good hope that they will carry this initiative forward, and of course keep rising, and this income of the people will ultimately generate. So this is one of a kind project. It has never happened across the country with so many stakeholders working on the same project at the same time. And I mean, it's not as simple as it sounds. It's quite an ambitious project, and we just hope to do something about it.
Superb, absolutely superb. Let's come back to CSR when we have when we talk to Anurag ji. But in the meantime, let's switch over to sustainability. Vishal ji, you represent a large cement company. So sustainability efforts in a cement company is really looked at with a lens by activists, by shareholders, by stakeholders, by the government, by everybody. Actually, everybody looks at a cement company like a villain. Okay, let's have a look. What are they doing? Are they displacing people? Are they digging mines? Are they displacing mountains? Are they destroying forests, river? What is the climate change plan? Are you becoming effective net zero? Are you revamping your supply chain? But nobody really comes to you and says, okay, look, let's talk impact investment. We'll give you $2 billion to revamp your supply chain, because the ROI effect will happen 10 years from now, when you work on supply chain. So how is a cement company coping with this? Is it business as usual, or is it pinching the pockets, or how does it happen, sir? Please tell us.
Thank you, Paresh, for the question. Of course, the picture which is getting painted for cement industry or for any of the large enterprise is always in terms of, okay, they have large footprint, creating a lot of impact on environment or society, but that is all agreed. But along with that, there is also development which the sector contributes. And for my organization, of course, Ultratech is the largest cement concrete player in India. While we have grown as business, actually, Ultratech has grown in size and its business and spread across India. We have sustainability consideration have been like integral part. As in my opening remark, also the question which you were asking, I told that, let's say, the journey on sustainability which Ultratech as an organization has started almost like 15 years back or 16 years back, and we have matured ourselves. Also in terms of imbibing right policies, technologies from ESG point of view, sustainability point of view, all of that has happened for us as an organization. And cement as a sector, Paresh, is a sector which has taken lead, not just now, but cement, if you know, cement as a sector is the only sector who had started this journey on sustainability through the project called as Cement Sustainability Initiative. This was started way back in 1998 under the World Business Council on Sustainable Development. Currently, that project has got moved and it has been driven by Global Cement and Concrete Association, which is trying to project the good work, the great work which the sector has done. And of course, Ultratech being part of the sector have contributed in that journey. Another point which you also made is about whether investors are willing to come on board. In sectors like ours, where there is a high impact of, let's say, carbon footprint and those areas, we as Ultratech, actually, we went out to market. We wanted to test this part of our resilience and our ability to maybe attract global investors, and we did that successfully in very few months back in the month of February, where we went out and we raised this sustainability linked bonds. And what we wanted to do is, one is we wanted to demonstrate a capability of a global organization with a matured process of sustainability. But we also wanted to demonstrate it to stakeholders that we are putting the skin in the game. So we are just not about trying to say that we'll be achieving certain targets of carbon footprint reduction. But if we don't achieve, then we are ready to even take that financial dent on our balance sheet. That's what happened when we raised this sustainability linked bond. This was the first company from India and first Asian company to do that in this month of February. And we raised almost $400 million. And we have put one of the most important parameters for any cement company, which is about carbon intensity. We have said if we, in this period for which we have raised this bond, we have said we'll reduce our emission intensity or carbon intensity by 22%. And in about 2 years period, actually, we have already achieved 6% against that 23%. So just to maybe summarize, of course, cement as a sector creates impact, but cement or concrete as a building material, in terms of choice of building materials being available, it is one of the most sustainable building material out there in market.
Thank you for your thoughts, Vishalji. I will come back to you in a few minutes. Let's talk to Hamsa-ji. Hamsa-ji, are you there?
Yes.
Hamsa-ji, I want to know your thoughts on sustainability. But before that, I am very keen to point out that sustainability as such has created so many businesses. For instance, yours. So your business, the entire business model is based on sustainability. So you're on the other side, in this panel, you are on the other side. The more the things happen, the more your company benefits, So that becomes a very stark difference between the industry panelists, the policymakers, and your company.
Sure.
So please let us have your thoughts on sustainability.
So I think, we've always done something sustainable. As individuals, we do things, we do thrifty things at home. We make sure, a very simple example, a cloth that we use, like any good cloth that we would wear at work, and once it becomes old, we wear it at home. Even that is an act of sustainability. We just extrapolate this thought and understand, how do we practice sustainability otherwise, right? So today, waste management is a big space where sustainability is spoken about, not just in the context of how you look at certain resources, but also in the context of how some of those resources become raw material for something else, right? So we're already talking about a paradigm shift. And in this, the connecting piece to actually having access to several of these resources is enabling that you give that 100% service to different people who are sort of marked as bulk generators of waste, but they're actually bulk generators of resources. So we've got to relook at that piece. So for example, we've had the MSW rules, municipal solid waste rules, revised 3 times in the last 2 decades. And each time we've gone to another level of segregation. Now, source segregation is sort of like the law of the land, right? So we have to segregate it into 4 parts, whether we are in a housing society, whether we are an institution, like whether I'm an educational institution or an office. I have to follow some of these rules and regulations and do that mandatory segregation. Often we talk about segregation from a space that, if you segregate in these different parts, it gets recycled. But what really happens in that recycle chain? What's actually happening in that supply chain? How can some of these resources be more and more extracted and, kept in circular use? I think that's like a fundamental piece for us to get the market dynamics up and running in that space. So the more resource recovery centers that we have, and that's the place where we sort of need the next level nudge, not just talk about source segregation, but actually create those material recovery centers so that businesses that are looking to create products, looking to create more and more different materials from already what's actually there in use, they can sort of take on and, create some of those value-added products. So that's the resource paradigm shift that, I would really like to talk about.
So please tell us.
Okay, so is it okay if I can just very quickly share my presentation? I'll just run through it. That's how I looked at it from a perspective of waste management to a circular economy, right? So
let's run through it quickly so that I can ask you questions. We have a policymaker, we have 2 people from the industry, and then I would like you to address them in what help can they do to companies like yours. So let's run through your presentation and then get back to them.
Right. So we've heard a lot of music, a lot of gyan and a lot of news about, how recycling market has this particular potential and what's its total worth. And we often talk about circularity and circular economy in the context of being self-reliant. I'm very glad to hear Shubhamji talk a little bit about going local for global, and this is actually the right spirit in which we can sort of take this piece up ahead. We've heard that government is now creating more and more policy where we're going to ban single use, but while we talk about banning single use, we've also got to think of the alternatives. What are those pieces that are going to make the jigsaw puzzle absolutely sustainable? Like, how do you look at circularity through and through so that it's an infinite loop, right? But no matter what we do, these sites don't go away. Our beaches still look like this. Our mountains are filled with trash. This is the human mountain of trash that we continue to create, village after village, city after city. And every landfill looks pretty much the same, right? So it's not like this site has changed at all. And this arises from this current piece, the way in which how we look at waste disposal. We're not looking at waste management. We're not looking at resource management. We continue to call it as waste disposal. And that's where the problem is, right? Kachra ko nikal ke kahin fek do, like, just take it away. It's out of sight, out of mind. But we really need to understand that, every product, every piece that we're putting out in the market or what we're seeing is actually different types of materials in itself, right? Including the fact that, when sustainability is a topic to be discussed, everybody loves to plant trees. But what happens to all of the leaf litter that we continue to see here and there, right? And what happens to things like thermocol, which is classified as hazardous waste? So nobody wants to pick it up. It's high volume, low weight, how do you create a market for things like this so that these don't land up in landfills, right? So we know that four-way segregation is the key. We've been talking about this for the last 2 decades, but the key really is that we need to understand every type of material can become a value-added product. I'm going to talk about this paradigm shift in a bit. When we aspire to be zero waste, we do exactly this, right? We're looking at every product, every waste stream as a potential resource. So when you look at door-to-door segregation, you not just look at composting as one part, but you also make sure that the recyclables actually go to the next level in the supply chain. And no matter which product you see today, right, like plastic is really inevitable. It's like right here in front of us. And while plastic-free lifestyle is something that we can all aspire, we still need to figure out what we are really doing about this. And what we do is, sort of address in terms of bridging these gaps. So if it's about creating awareness, let's do that. Let's create that communication campaign. Let's sort of gear up and do that. And that's actually also a great source of livelihoods and jobs that we can do. How do you bring accountability? How do you sort of knit that together with citizen groups, with households, with waste collectors, with the next level processors? And then I think the important part is to also understand what kind of infrastructure really makes sense. We don't need something that's fancy. We don't need something that's very energy intensive. We need something that is simple, works, and is in line with the Indian concept of jugaad. So that you can actually rethink and realign and be creative in terms of what can be locally acceptable. Now I know that a lot of plastic actually gets baled, and then that goes on to further processing. So we need to enable more of that to make sure that all of our plastics are streamlined. We don't have any microplastic containment. A lot of Tetra Paks can easily be woven into bags. That's a potential resource for us. We don't need to necessarily make bags out of different, that's one more material in that list. We need to relook at how all of our clothes are reaching the landfill too. And all of this, creating of, looking at this as a resource to creating these value-added products, all of them are jobs. They can all easily, provide livelihood to people across, villages, peri-urban areas, peri-rural areas, and even in the urban areas, because there's enough and more of these materials that are lying around. And I know that MLP for a very long time has been, been a source for a lot of cement kilns. We also need to look at how, rather than just burning them, can we also sort of create different value-added products? And this is like a product case by Recharkha, where they create yarn from MLP and then they make bags out of it. So that's also another way to look at it. It's a resource paradigm shift. And we sort of make resource management happen through, we make zero waste happen essentially through different partner networks. And what we're essentially doing is we're creating that market for clean trash. We're creating that market for this upcoming space. So when we talk about e-waste, there's a lot of conversation that's happening in the context of secondary mining. But that means that e-waste has to be non-food contaminated. It has to come out clean right from the household to the sorting center, and then be taken ahead to the next level. And for that, we're going to need a big push where we're able to talk about materials recovery centers. And these centers are, again, like hub of jobs, right? So you don't just have sorters or people who are putting things together, but you also have a network of ecopreneurs who are able to create that value-added products out and get it across. And these are very easily implementable at, say, maybe at the Gram Panchayat level or at the ward level. And that's actually that many more value addition jobs that we will have. I'm also going to talk a little bit about not just sending plastic to recycling, right? So what you see here is over 2,500 such plastic jars. And Studio Alternatives is a company that does a lot of upcycling and repurposing. And they actually converted that into a proper space. So it actually sort of served the purpose as a wall in one of their sheds. And that's the kind of shift that we need to look at. Garden waste and coconut waste is often one of those challenging pieces which we're wondering, what is it that we need to do? How can we sort of channelize this to not end the landfill, or how can we recycle or repurpose this better? And tradition has had this. We've always made some of these products for years, and these have evolved to the next generation altogether. Those who compost and those who have enabled compost know that coco peat is a very value-added resource that we can have, which aids composting, which keeps odor under control. And the best part about the coco coir products is that they're sort of microplastic free. So you know that, even if some of the fibers enter in your water stream, they will degrade eventually at a point of time. I'm going to stop at that. And just, tell you in terms of, we really need this paradigm shift. We've spoken about segregation for 2 decades. And I think that era is now evolving organically into something where we're talking about resource management and not just waste management. And that is an absolute new economy, if we can really sort of integrate that and see the larger picture. So I'm going to leave everybody with that thought that, let's not be part of the pollution, let's be part of the solution together. So thank you.
Thank you, Amsaji, for that. That was a very nice presentation. Do we have a copy? Have you sent a copy?
I will send that copy immediately.
Yeah, please send me a copy. I would like Wanda to have a copy of that and a few of our other mentors.
Sure.
So that we can have a discussion with you. Now, my question to you is, of course, we should do this at a Gram Panchayat level or rural level. But I understand that there will be economies of scales to look at, so that there is affordability in terms of manpower.
So actually, it's already happening. We've been providing services to over 23 Gram Panchayats in and around Pune, where this is already affordable and scalable. And because of the new GR that has come in, we now know that solid waste management is also a mandate at the village level, right? So they need that to be part of their DPR. And we know how that has to sort of change gears and go ahead, because let's admit it, our villages don't look like villages anymore. There's a landfill there's a fundamental landfill that you can see either when you're leaving the village or when you're entering the village. Somewhere you see that mound of trash, and we've got to do something about it. And if it's not scalable, say maybe within a village, then definitely between 5 villages in the proximity, we can create that kind of service. And those are all local jobs. So, so why not look at it not just from a cleanliness and from an environment perspective, but also from an employment perspective. So
is there any way? See, so what you are necessarily saying is, the government works, the government comes out with rules, and then citizens work on it, and then companies like you will help, with recycling. That is necessarily the flow chart.
But it's also happening all simultaneously. It's not one after the other. Citizens, whether they're in villages, peri-urban spaces, in urban spaces, they all want clean surroundings. I think that's a fair basic ask. So when we say that, and there are a lot of CSR companies who are also beginning to realize, so community projects, a lot of self-help groups talk about the fact that the area is not clean, and they want to do something about it. So why not create and mobilize some of those groups to see how we can create those services that are much needed, right?
Let's hold on to that thought. Let's reach out to Anurag ji and come back to you. Of course, we have a few questions for you, but it was very interesting to know, and we'll take this forward anyway. As I said before, just before we started this seminar, I'm very interested in your business model. And I'm sure Patrick will have a few questions too. What is China doing is a question that we have for Patrick. So let's go on to Anurag ji. Anurag ji, thank you very much for being here with us today. And we would like to have your thoughts on CSR and sustainability, sir.
I always believe that the CSR is one part of the larger debate that's happening in sustainability. I'm a firm believer that you cannot delink both of them and talk about it, because CSR is a subset of sustainability. That's the reason why I said that the whole discussion on ESG that is happening today, I'm just, sometimes I feel that why this didn't happen 10 years back, because these are part of the larger module that anyone can think of. If I have to talk about what we are doing at Capgemini, then there is huge amount of focus that we brought in there, primarily because being in IT industry, there are pitfalls that we all experience. And I completely have a full sympathy with you, Vishal, with some of the arguments that you'll have to always bring in there whenever you have to talk about human industry and what the work that human industry is doing. But no one practically talks about the kind of contribution that cement industry has in the development process and how they have contributed in the development processes that have happened there. Same is with the IT industry. So we came out with fairly ambitious target for ourselves. What we are talking today is becoming carbon neutral by 2025, becoming net zero by 2030. Fairly ambitious. When I look at 150,000 employee base in India, 290,000 people all over world, presence in more, close to 50 countries. The target looks ambitious, target looks tough, but that's what it is. And the whole attempt from doing smaller stuff to bigger stuff, making sure that all our energies are drawn from renewable, making sure that travel is getting what is called curtailed to maximum numbers, using tech to connect, using tech as an enabler to what is called replace some of the physical meetings that we used to have, making sure that travel becomes green in a number of sense, identify vendors who are not what is called dumping thermocol making sure that our vendors are what is called fully aligned with our sustainability thought processes. There's a huge amount of work that's happening there. That's at the Capgemini level. At the larger industry level, I do see, I'll say, a greater understanding on this particular topic. I do see CSR folks and also the leadership, CXOs, have started talking about it, and suddenly you find these to become a boardroom discourse, which is I'll say music to my ear, because the moment your directors start talking about sustainability at their normal board level topics, that means that change is inevitable. It will happen, and that's what I do see happening there. What I don't see, and that's where I guess CASI and network like yours will have a huge role to play, is making sure that people who are managing CSR, they understand the larger connect between sustainability, CSR development, and the various other development dimensions and discourses that happen. We are looking at things purely from optics. That needs to shift. We need to start looking at greater impact. We need to start looking at how we start funding impact and outcome related projects rather than optics related projects. How we can start looking at how what are the various projects which can create the innovation, bring in the native wisdom that somewhere we lost it. How we can institutionalize some of the change processes there. These are some of the stuff that I feel the CSR larger ecosystem need to embrace and start working on. I sometimes I don't play. I'm being caustic. I play with a straight bat, and that's where I always feel that we need to take it to impact and outcome related, and then only you can start seeing the change. Otherwise, it will be like X number of people reached, Y number of people benefited, Z number of people are part of beneficiaries. Everyone is happy with the annual report. We close the year, we close the annual report, we move to the next year, we start seizing out some more numbers there. So it's no one is really talking about if everyone was doing development for the last 70 years, then why we are still poor? If everyone was talking about cleanliness, why the cities are still not clean? If everyone was, I'll say, doing circular usage of product at home, then why we are dumping our waste outside? If everyone was concerned about cleanliness, why we clean our homes and throw the dust outside? These are all, I'll say, I always say that we have number of times we have romanticized the ideas. Number of times we have only talked about good. We tried becoming, I'll say, good in front of others. We don't challenge people to say that, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You are not doing. It was interesting listening to Shubhamji when he was talking about some of the work that he's trying to do. Gadchiroli is old love of mine. I used to go there once upon a time. I'll say it's like close to around 20 years back when I used to work and fund Ami Amcha Arogya Sati. they were our, I used to fund them at the initial level. And looking at some of the work that you're doing, it will be very interesting to sit with you and understand some of the work that's happening and how larger CSR can contribute some of these exercises. Then we are working with a number of innovators in these spaces there. So overall, Pareshji, it's a mixed feeling whenever I talk about sustainability. It's like we are still debating whether this is a good thing to do or not. And as I said earlier, you look at the weather, and if it's still not a wake-up call for all of us, then what will be the wake-up call? Typically, your monsoon should now head back. There's still no news of monsoon heading back. We are still late by another 10 to 15 days, and it's happening every year.
Correct. Absolutely, sir.
Look at your disasters. How many disasters every year we are witnessing? One relief to another, another to another, and we are not at all talking about resilience. We are not at all talking about how to really cope up with the whole thing. It's happening so frequently that it's becoming part of us. That's where I'll rest my case. More that you will hear from me, you will start getting the angry voices which will come out from you.
No, Anurag, that is why we have this close forum between people. So it becomes a friends group, and then we are able to vent out what we really feel. I'll tell you, when I started CASI around 12 years back, I was the managing director of a bank. Before that, I was the managing director of a broking company. And then I went into entrepreneurship and I wanted to promote sustainability. So the first thing that I wrote is sustainability and CSR should be imbibed in every department of a company, and it cannot be treated as a separate business. And this year, 1 month back, one of the largest forums globally had that tagline on the balance sheet, that sustainability needs to be imbibed in every department. So that is what we have been doing for 12 years. And you are absolutely right. This is all interconnected. Nothing is as simple as it looks. And if we are already doing it, then why is everything so dirty? Yeah. So yes, it is a wake up call. And I'm very happy that you are voicing your opinion from Capgemini. It means a lot, sir. We are
every company, I'll say every company say that we have done huge amount of work, and my question is, if everyone has done, not blaming the companies only, all the NGOs, look at their annual report, all the state government, look at their annual report, look at all the network. If you combine everything, I'll say that 5 times of the earth got transformed.
Yes, these are great thoughts. Let's take it offline, sir. But you are right. I absolutely agree with you at a personal level. Patrick, what is your opinion on sustainability and ESG? You will have a very unique point of view because you are an European, so you have an European shade, and you are settled in China, so you'll have a Chinese shade. So your opinion, I look forward to your opinion. Patrick, what's your opinion?
Oh, great.
Okay, so my opinion is changing from day to day, hour to hour. I think the big difference that I have to many people who are positive about sustainability is that I consider there's a lot more uncertainty. There's uncertainty about the problem, and there's also uncertainty about a lot of the solutions that are presented as very clear. So, I mean, just to give an example is, for example, climate change, right? You have this renewable energy that is presented as a solution, and I'm very skeptical about that. I'm skeptical about the environmental impacts of those solutions, all the minerals that are needed, the mining related to that, the new infrastructure that's needed. If you have energy sources coming from further away, you need more transmission and so on. That's a huge impact as well. And also you've seen many examples of not providing the energy that is needed. And then you have suddenly crisis because you have the weather is changing, you have a colder winter, and then these renewable sources are not providing enough heating, for example. So I think that we don't really understand the climate change risks. That's one issue. But I don't think we really should invest more in doing that. I think the risk is obvious, like you mentioned the weather. I think this is clearly an indicator that there's a risk. But we need to look at what are the possible solutions. And I think the solutions need to be much more broader. I do think we need to look much more at consumption. If consumption is not changed, if we just think that we can solve it through recycling, greater efficiency in different energy sources, I don't think that's going to work. So that's basically my thing, that you need to have some kind of a look at consumption, and also traditional things like food. I see a lot on LinkedIn talking about food waste, and it's not, you have food waste in the consumer, that's a lot of people talking about, but there's one guy on LinkedIn, Matt Howard, who talks about supermarket waste. So the whole supermarket business model is based on high margins and then throwing out things that are not sold. So that goes through the whole supply chain. If you look at that waste that is wasted there in supermarkets, that is then being produced and being transported from far away. So you have all these opportunities to actually reduce waste, but I think all the discussion is about renewable energy, wind and solar, possibly recycling is an interesting example. I was listening today about the villages, and that's something I've seen in China, is that when you have very, very high levels of poverty, recycling has high opportunities. But if you go and look at rich Western countries, it's very difficult to have efficient recycling because nobody wants to do it. And Western countries were actually exporting waste to China for a long time until China reached a living standard where they said, no, we don't want to do that anymore. So now the waste is not being taken by China. I think that's an interesting example of how when you go from a certain living standard, recycling becomes much harder. And I think there's all these complexities that just makes the problem much more challenging. But we need to have a transparent discussion about that if we're going to have any kind of solution that is actually going to work. So
that is an amazing thought, Patrick. We should definitely have a couple of seminars on reducing consumption and recycling. That was a very different angle altogether. At the source, at the source. So reduce waste at the source. Don't create waste so that you can recycle it. How about stopping to create it, the supermarkets and all? Dr. Mitesh, we should definitely work on this angle. Thank you very much, Patrick. Does anybody have a question for anyone? We have time, 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes, so please, anyone has a question.
I just said Hamza is worried now.
No, not at all. There's enough and more waste for all of us to be happy with. It's just a matter of choosing that happiness.
I'm just pulling a leg.
If there are no questions, then we shall end this for the day. Thank you all very much.
I think Patrick has something.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah,
I have a question related to what I was just talking about, is that corporate strategies, so this is something I'm interested in. Corporate strategies have now a strategy for ESG and for climate change. But my question would be, is there a strategy for what if these things like carbon neutral? For example, carbon neutral is if I go from countries where I come from in Denmark, carbon neutral is burning trees, for example. That counts as carbon neutral because there's this calculation that a tree, it doesn't count, but actually burning trees has a higher emission level than coal. So for me, that's just a crazy thing. So corporations, do they have any kind of strategy thinking about that? If we are following this guidance from ESG experts and from climate change experts, and it suddenly is exposed that a lot of this is wrong, how can this impact a lot if we're investing based on this and suddenly it's all wrong? Do you need to have a strategy for the strategy, basically?
That is a difficult one, Patrick. Vishalji, would you like to have a go at that?
Only on the point which Patrick is making, of course, using, let's say, biomass to generate energy and not conventional fuel. All corporates or let's say the so-called experts on ESG would rely on the IPCC report and their guidance. So there has to be a lot of discussions at that level to get let's say a report telling whether it is the sustainable way to move or do the whole energy transition, what we are trying to do, moving away from conventional fuel to more of a renewable fuel like biomass.
Anuragji, please.
So there are, it's a valid one, and that's what I was sharing earlier also, that there's a need to create a network of people or a group of people who really understand sustainability. You do not have too many people who really understand the nuances of sustainability. What we have created in the last, I'll say, a number of years is project managers and project coordinators. We have not created thought leaders. We have not created, I'll say, who can strategize the strategies, as Patrick was talking about. We have not created people who can think through. We have not created people who can bring in people and look at ideas and contrasting one and then challenge them. We have not created the space to dissent. We have not created a space for an alternate opinion there. Either you are with me or you are against me. And that's very I feel that and that's where network like this can certainly create people who understand what sustainability is all about. Otherwise, we look at from very limited prism, and if it's not going to be a sustainability. Sustainability will not become I'll say a corporate discourse if you don't bring money margins to the books of companies. And a simple one, for example, and these are, everyone can witness this particular thing. Imagine 5 years back whenever we used to buy a cell phone, how big the box used to be. How many literatures, how many leaflets used to be there in that particular box. Imagine or go back a couple of years back and look at your as the packaged water bottle cap, how big that used to be. Look at how smaller that has become now. So people are what is called bringing in these thought processes to look at what Patrick said, that let's reduce the creation of waste itself. And there are projects which is looking at carbon captures. There are projects which is looking at how you can work around the whole carbon sequestration in a more positive and more structured manner. There are enough material. What we need is people who are driving it. They should understand the larger construct of sustainability. Unfortunately, we don't have too many people who understand this. Otherwise, wisdoms are there, and people who are sitting in, I'll say, tribal districts, they'll have a greater wisdom there, because people there, they believe on a number of native common sense, which in the sense help them do things. And I'll stop another 10 seconds. I always said, people talk about national policy on tribal development. The world will change the moment you will have a tribal policy on national development. Change the whole way of thinking. You'll have a different way. You'll have a different approach, and paradigm is going to shift, provided if you are willing to.
Absolutely, Anuragji. It is. Your thoughts are crystal clear on this. It is absolutely amazing that yes, we should learn from the past. The ethnic minorities have a lot of knowledge within them because they have not been on a wasteful binge like the urban population. So yes, you're absolutely right. Anyone else? Any comments, please?
So I'd also like to say that, when we talk about carbon sequestration, we talk about what's sort of like a best practice in some other country. And we don't think of what the local context is. So can we like restore ecosystems rather than just planting trees? We've heard of, it's just very amazing to hear report after report saying that we planted 2 lakh trees. Can we instead say that we restored one ecosystem together? Can we say that we revived grasslands that are there? Can we say that we revived, a certain, we revived a forest rather than saying that we planted 2 lakh trees? That has far more meaning. You create a biodiversity value to that space that has more carbon sequestration value. And, while we're at it, let's also take care of the trash, like I can't leave the trash out of that context, but we really, really need to think of how we've got to rethink some of these things in the local context. Just because Denmark is doing it in a certain way doesn't mean that Maharashtra or Gadchiroli has to do it in a certain way, or Pune has to do it in a certain way.
Please don't follow Denmark. Please don't follow Denmark. They're a horrible example. Denmark is greenwashing.
Yeah.
The Scandinavian countries are masters of greenwashing.
Yeah,
that's one of the problems.
We've just got to sort of relook at what it means to me at the local level. And just relooking at that is like, will open a window of opportunities for everybody. And I think if we look at it from that light, we really, we'll go somewhere. At least the narrative will change, if nothing.
But thank you, Amsa, for that. With that, we come to the end of the program. This has been a very interesting session. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Wanda, for being here. Thank you, Shubhamji. Thank you very much for sharing that project at Gadchiroli with us. I will definitely take details of the project from you, and we will circulate it to all the members present today and to our corporate members. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to my ESG exchange, the CASI ESG exchange that we are about to launch in the next 2 weeks. So any thoughts, suggestions, let's take it offline, and I wish you all luck on